The energy in the studio that morning was electric, one of those rare days when everyone, from the camera operators to the makeup artists, could feel that something big was about to happen. The View was always unpredictable, but today was different. The guest wasn't just anyone. It was Cher, the legend herself, the woman whose name alone had defined decades of pop culture. As the audience poured in, the stage lights flickered to life, the signature theme music played, and the hosts took their seats. Joy Behar adjusted her red-framed glasses, already rehearsing her sharpest one-liners. Whoopi Goldberg leaned back in her chair with her usual calm authority, sipping coffee. Sunny Hostin smiled warmly at the audience, her cue cards neatly stacked in front of her. But behind the curtain, Cher stood quietly with her stylist, taking a deep breath. Even after all these years, after sold-out tours, Grammy wins, and Oscar speeches, live television still came with its own kind of tension. She had been invited to talk about her new album and her environmental activism, but she knew The View's reputation. It was never just a conversation. There was always an edge, a test of patience, a moment where someone pushed too far. "All right, Ms. Cher, we're live in 30 seconds, a stagehand said. Cher smiled faintly and muttered, "Let's give them a show." When the cameras rolled, the audience erupted. Whoopi introduced her with an enthusiasm that nearly drowned out the applause. "Please welcome the one and only, the ageless, the unstoppable, Cher." The curtain parted, and there she was, draped in black sequins that caught the light like fireflies, her signature long hair cascading down her shoulders. She waved to the crowd, gave Whoopi a big hug, and nodded politely to the other hosts as she took her seat. Joy Behar grinned from across the table, trying to start on a friendly note. "Cher, I swear you must be part vampire. You don't age. What's the secret? Witchcraft or surgery?" The audience laughed, but Cher's smile was tight, measured. "No witchcraft, Joy, just clean living and refusing to hang around negative people." Whoopi nearly spit out her coffee as the audience howled in laughter. Even Sunny covered her mouth to hide a grin. Joy gave a small, playful smirk, but her eyes flickered with something else, something defensive. The first part of the interview went smoothly enough. They talked about Cher's upcoming Las Vegas residency, her thoughts on the music industry, and her long career of reinvention. Cher spoke with charm and wit, gesturing passionately as she recalled stories about Sunny, Elvis, and the crazy rollercoaster of fame. But the tone shifted when Joy decided to bring politics into it. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Cher, you've been very outspoken about certain political figures. Don't you ever worry that being too political might alienate your fans?" The audience went quiet. The other co-hosts exchanged cautious glances. Cher tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but unyielding. "You mean the fans who've stuck with me through 6 decades? They know who I am. I've never been shy about what I believe, and they love me for it." "Well," Joy continued, clearly enjoying the rising tension, "there's a difference between having an opinion and lecturing people. Sometimes celebrities forget that not everyone wants to hear their politics." Cher chuckled, a soft, dangerous sound. "And sometimes talk show hosts forget that their guests are invited to speak, not to be scolded." The audience gasped and broke into applause. Whoopi muttered under her breath, "Here we go." Joy forced a tight laugh, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, Cher. I'm just saying what the people think." Cher leaned in, her voice smooth but cutting. "No, Joy, you're saying what you think. There's a difference." The crowd roared again, but Joy's smile was slipping now. She tried to recover, glancing toward the cameras. "I think we can agree that celebrities have a responsibility not to alienate people." Cher sat back, crossing her legs, eyes gleaming with fire. "I think everyone has a responsibility to stand up for what's right. If that alienates people, then maybe those people were never with you to begin with." The silence was thick, even the stage lights seemed to hum louder. Sunny quickly tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Cher, let's talk about your work with climate change awareness. You've partnered with several organizations." Cher smiled gratefully at Sunny, but Joy wasn't done. "I just think it's interesting," Joy interrupted, "how so many artists who preach about saving the world still fly private jets everywhere. Isn't that a little hypocritical?" The moment hung like a storm cloud. Whoopi's eyes widened in disbelief, while the audience began murmuring. The second half of the show began under a strange, shimmering tension. The air inside the View's studio felt different, charged, unpredictable, alive. The audience, who had spent the entire commercial break murmuring about Cher's cutting remarks to Joy Behar, now sat on the edge of their seats. Some whispered excitedly to one another, others clutched their phones, already checking social media for clips of what had just happened. The confrontation had gone viral before the next segment even started. When the cameras flicked back on, Joy forced a wide, overly bright smile. Her cue cards trembled slightly in her hand, though she tried to hide it by setting them down. Whoopi Goldberg cleared her throat, looking directly into the camera, and said in her calm, measured voice, "Welcome back to The View, everybody. We're still here with the one and only Cher." The audience clapped, but the energy wasn't light anymore, it was expectant, like thunder waiting to break. Cher reappeared on stage after a brief backstage breather, her composure intact. She traded her earlier smirk for a small, professional smile. She gave a nod to Whoopi and Sunny, then turned toward Joy with a look that was polite but cold enough to freeze glass. The producers had convinced her to finish the segment, but anyone watching could tell she was only there out of respect for the audience. "Welcome back, Cher," Whoopi said carefully. "You were just telling us about your upcoming documentary." Cher relaxed slightly. "Yes," she began, her voice smooth again. "It's a project that means a lot to me. It's about reinvention, resilience, and learning to keep fighting for what you believe in, even when people tell you to sit down and be quiet." The audience immediately picked up on the subtext and erupted in applause. Joy shifted in her seat but said nothing. Sunny smiled encouragingly. "That's powerful," she said. "You've been through so many eras of fame and public scrutiny. What do you think has kept you grounded through all that?" Cher smiled genuinely at that question. "The truth," she said simply. "In knowing who I am. If you don't define yourself, someone else will do it for you, and they'll usually get it wrong." Her words hung in the air like a stone dropped into water. It was a veiled message, and Joy knew it. The tension, which had softened briefly, began to rise again. Joy leaned forward, forcing a laugh that sounded a little too practiced. "Well, Cher, that's easy for you to say. You've always had a platform, always had people listening. For some of us, the world doesn't take our opinions quite so seriously." Cher turned slowly to her, one eyebrow raised. "Joy," she said evenly, "you've made a career out of people listening to you. Don't sell yourself short." The audience chuckled, sensing another storm brewing. Joy pressed on, clearly determined not to lose control of the conversation again. "I mean, come on," she said, her tone playful but sharp. "You talk about truth, but even you must admit, showbiz isn't exactly built on it. People reinvent themselves all the time. You've done it. How much of that is really about truth, and how much is about keeping yourself relevant?" There it was, the spark that lit the fuse. Cher tilted her head, her smile fading. "Keeping myself relevant," she repeated, her tone deceptively calm. "Sweetheart, I am relevant. I've been relevant since before most of your audience was born." The studio exploded in laughter and applause. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Cher wasn't finished. "You don't stay in this business for 60 years by chasing trends or pretending to be something you're not. You stay because you evolve, and because people still care what you have to say." The applause turned into a standing ovation for a moment, and even Whoopi couldn't help but clap. Joy forced a smile, but her eyes were tight. "All right," she said through clenched teeth, "point taken." Sunny jumped in quickly, trying to diffuse the tension. "Cher, you've mentioned evolution. How do you decide what parts of yourself to keep and what to leave behind?" Cher's gaze softened as she turned toward Sunny. "That's the beautiful part," she said. "You don't have to leave anything behind. Every version of yourself, the young rebel, the heartbroken lover, the fighter, they all make you who you are. The trick is learning how to carry them without letting the past weigh you down." The audience sighed, clearly moved. The moment was almost poetic, until Joy, once again, couldn't resist. "That's a nice speech," she said, leaning forward, "but I think some people just don't like letting go of the spotlight. There's a difference between evolving and refusing to bow out gracefully." Whoopi's eyes widened, and a collective gasp swept through the crowd. Cher turned her head, staring directly at Joy. The look was so piercing that even the cameras seemed to hesitate.